Cody Hufstedler is a palliative care chaplain based in Denver, Colorado, and he's also the host of the Dying to Tell You podcast, not to be confused with the Dying to Know More podcast. On his podcast, he has some powerful conversations with people who are facing terminal illness and the reality that their time here is coming to an end. Cody, thank you for being on the Dying to Know More podcast. It is very lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you too.
So
I think that's how we got connected.
Is that right? The similarity?
Well, yeah, I think I see all these things that have dying in the title because of my title. So
yeah. So let's establish a baseline understanding for those who may be unfamiliar. What is a palliative care chaplain, and what does that role entail?
Yeah. So it's hard to explain what a chaplain does, and even harder to explain what a palliative care chaplain does. But palliative care is a specialty that is a medical specialty that works with people who are living with life-limiting or terminal illness. And I say life-limiting meaning the disease or whatever they have will likely end their life at some point, though it's unclear when.
Mm-hmm.
Terminal meaning within a year or 6 months, kind of depending on who you ask. But so it can be things that people live with for a very long time, such as heart failure, kidney disease, liver disease, a lot of lung disease, COPD, things like that, dementia.
Mm-hmm.
So we work with people who are receiving life extending treatments. So people with cancer who are still on chemotherapy, all of those things that people live with for a long time, can live with for a long time, and things that are more acute and more serious. And the specialty really is to help people live as well as they can for as long as they can. And that really entails a lot of emotional, psychological support for the patient and the family as they learn to live with whatever it is that they have, and symptom support. So the doctors and nurses are especially trained in managing symptoms of those particular diseases and the symptoms that come along with the treatments of those diseases. So, like chemotherapy causes a lot of other things that happen. And so the doctors and nurses are really paying attention to helping alleviate the side effects of those treatments. A chaplain, so I worked inpatient, so I was always in the hospital. And as you might expect, in the hospital, things are more acute. People have things that are changing. Sorry, I'm hitting the mic. Things that are changing with their disease. So sometimes it's people who have just gotten their diagnosis for the very first time and are learning for the very first time that they have something that is going to be with them for the rest of their lives. Okay. So, a new cancer diagnosis, new lung disease diagnosis, interstitial lung disease, or something like that. And so as a chaplain, I think that we get a lot of kind of religious connotation because of the word, but really what we're there for is to help people access whatever it is that gives them meaning and purpose in life, help them to kind of work through the emotional impact of having something like that, and then try to help them turn back toward what is it that's most important to you, what's meaningful to you. Let's make some decisions, healthcare decisions, about how you want to live based on what's really important, not based on the panic that you feel when you get a new diagnosis like this. Really trying to help people be as thoughtful as possible with medical decision making, help them to come to an understanding of what this means for them and how this is going to affect their life, and help them to start to see what life can look like as they're living with this disease, and how they can best live with what they have.
So is there a religious bent to the work, or is it more of a spiritual?
It can be.
Or
yeah, I mean, it depends on the person. So if the patient has, if religion or spirituality is a big part of what they find meaning in, then sure,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
But certainly not my place to go in and tell them what they believe or tell them
Right.
what they should believe. It's for a lot of people, it is, how did this happen? Well, why would God let this happen? What is the end of life going to look like for me? What is the
Mhm.
afterlife going to look like for me? And again, it's not my place to give the answers, but to help them kind of sort through what they really believe and what they think
Okay.
about all of that.
Yeah, because I feel like people do associate the word chaplain with, God or religion or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
it would seem to me that people who maybe not be religious or Christian or whatever might be like, I don't need a chaplain because that's
Mm-hmm.
not, you know what I mean? Do you find that?
Yeah.
Like, is that common?
Yeah, I mean, it happens. Luckily, I have good teammates who recognize the benefit and often say, "Well, he's not like that," or whatever.
Yeah,
Let him come see me.
right.
Or sometimes, I mean, what I always tell people is, don't ask
Yeah,
a person if they want a chaplain. If you feel like they could benefit from what I do, then tell me and I'll go see them. I'm really good
yeah,
at leaving the room.
yeah,
I know when I'm not wanted, and
right.
I'm happy to leave when I'm
Yeah,
not wanted.
gotcha.
And I give people an easy out and
Yeah,
let them know I'm the easiest person in the hospital to kick out of a room.
yeah,
So I'm
I gotcha.
happy to go.
What led you to this work? Like, how long have you been doing it, and what was
Yeah,
it, just kind of like a pull or?
yeah. I grew up in a very conservative church and
Okay.
wanted to work in churches. I don't know, for a very long time, and I got my undergraduate degree in biblical studies and worked in churches for a while, and started to realize, uh, I don't know, this part's boring, but that particular church and that line of work wasn't going to do it for me. So I needed to go back to school and do a master's degree in order to do anything else really that I wanted to do. And
Yeah,
during that time, I realized church work really isn't for me.
yeah.
So I finished my master's in theology, and uh, a few years later, a friend of mine said, "Hey, you should think about chaplaincy."
Mm,
I wasn't really happy with what I was doing. I was doing some kind of social work type work,
yeah,
and he was like, chaplaincy training is a lot of self work. Like
yeah,
getting to understand who you are and what triggers you and what doesn't trigger you, and like how you can kind of work through your stuff and still be there for other people. And
yeah,
he was like, you'll benefit from going through the training even if you don't like the work. And
right.
so I said, well, I'm unhappy where I am, and I might as well do something different. So I quit my job and got a chaplaincy training residency, and I just love the work. So I did a residency here in Denver, and then at the end of the residency, the palliative care team at the hospital was hiring part-time chaplain.
Hmm.
And so I took that and I did part-time palliative care and part-time some other work. And then eventually, I think probably a year in, I became full-time there. And I was there. I left that position in June, but I was there for 12 years.
Okay.
So pretty
So are
long
you
time
still
there working in
practicing
the
or no?
hospital. I stopped. I left my job in June, and I'm no, not currently working
Okay.
as a chaplain.
Okay.
Just doing the podcast at the moment.
Gotcha. So in terms of the podcast, obviously it's a natural topic based on your background and your career and
Right.
your, calling. But what led you to start a podcast? Like, you
Yeah.
know, in particular.
Well, the further along in my career I got, I guess probably the better I became at being a chaplain. I was
Yeah.
having these amazing conversations with people
Hmm.
that were really teaching me a lot about how I want to live.
Hmm.
And I kept telling these stories to family and friends. And I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I was like, I wish you guys could be a fly on the wall to hear these stories from
Yeah.
those people, because it's so much more powerful than me sitting there telling you what they said.
So for
And
listeners, let me interrupt real quick. For listeners, give the elevator pitch about what your podcast is.
sure. Um, So this is a conversation with somebody who knows that they're coming to the end of their life,
Mhm,
and or could be coming to the end of their life,
mhm,
and what that has taught them about how they live and what they have learned about what's most important in life,
mhm,
and really kind of where they're finding joy, where they're finding meaning, what they're hoping for as they look kind of at the finish line of their life.
mhm,
What's going on in there?
mhm, mhm.
That's really what this is about, and it really is not. I think it can sound morbid, but these conversations are really often very joyful. I mean, these
Yeah,
people are, they're amazing, first of all, and the last season was season 3, and I think most of those people spent most of the time talking about the benefits that they've gotten from living with terminal illness. It's just
okay.
the the realization about what life is and what's important to them
Mhm,
really has transformed their lives. And while they are living with illness and sometimes pretty significant deficit because of ALS progression or something like that, they're still finding so much meaning, joy, purpose, and in what they're doing. And
yeah,
yeah, they're just so gracious. I think would be the word. Lots of gratitude, and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they're they're amazing people.
Do you find that it's challenging to find people to be on your show, or is it actually pretty easy? Like, how do you
Yeah, I
make
mean,
it happen?
when I started, I was like, this is going to be a heavy lift to try to
Yeah,
find people, that are sick, that are have come to terms with the fact that they're coming to the end of their life,
yeah,
that they're willing to talk to a stranger about it and potentially let lots of other strangers hear it.
right.
That's pretty big request,
Mhm,
and so in the beginning, because I didn't have a lot of networks of people to send me people, I was asking my palliative care physician friends, people that worked in palliative care outside of the hospital. I didn't ever ask my own patients. I felt like that was a kind of a conflict of
I was
interest.
wondering
But
about that. Yeah,
so I would ask physicians that I worked with but had patients outside of the hospital. So I got some people, and we just had 2 or 3 episodes prepared, and I was like, we're never going to get any more people if we don't launch. So we just launched with a couple in the bank, and put it out. And as we've put out more and more episodes, as we've gotten connected through social media and other things, they uh, it has become not a problem. In fact, it's more, the bigger problem is recording these episodes and getting them out in a timely manner, so that, because things are changing a lot with these people. And so
mhm,
we don't, the very first person we recorded, we were waiting and waiting and waiting, and his didn't get out before he died. And that was a I mean, that was hard for us. I'm sure it was disappointing for him and his family. um and so we didn't ever want that to happen again, so we're
yeah,
trying really hard to time it just right, so that
yeah,
the people who are more significantly ill, we get them out a little more quickly. So we've got several recorded, and we've got a couple recordings scheduled, but we're trying not to push it out too far, because we want to make sure people are able to hear and interact with it. And um yeah, so it hasn't been that big of a problem, honestly.
I would
People
think
are
people would
more and
want
more willing.
to kind of share, I think and maybe I mean, how would I know? But with when you feel your time coming to an end, like, you would want your voice to be heard at least one
Yeah.
last time, I think,
Yeah,
and
and a lot of people have, a thing. The very first episode is the one that I always tell everybody to start with, because I love Aaron, and he came to us. I contacted him first, and we put it off because COVID happened, and then he came back to us and said, "Look, things are changing, but I really want to do this. This is
Yeah.
my message is everybody needs to be planning for death. And
Mhm.
we talk about, everything else, planning for everything else in life, but nobody talks about planning death. And he had this
So true.
drum he was beating. And that has been the case with a lot of people. Some people want to talk about the practical side of making medical decisions and doing advanced directives and things like that. Some people
Mhm.
want to talk about, their enlightenment moment, so
Yeah.
a lot of these people have a thing that they are really wanting to talk about. And, the other benefit of this is these people have this moment in time captured that a lot of
Mhm.
people don't get because they're not doing it. I mean, nobody sits down to really record their story.
Right.
And our first guest, Aaron, his wife, will contact me probably every 6 months or so and say, "Thank you again for recording this. I'd love to just go back and listen to Aaron's voice." And
Aw.
she goes
Yeah.
back and listens to him tell his story again and again. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's
What a gift. That's
yeah, I
amazing.
mean, that's that's worth the time and money
Yeah.
for me to like
Yeah.
do this and let them have that. I think that's really cool.
Are there any uh, I mean, I know you interview people with a variety of different things that are bringing them to the end of their lives. But is there any kind of common thread or common bond that you hear
Mm.
repeatedly from them when it comes to approaching the end of life?
Hmm.
Like any regrets or any wish I had or glad I did or points of advice or anything like that?
I think um, the most common kind of comment, or lesson learned is, um, really to slow down.
Mm.
The Yeah, one of the ladies, Kelly, I think she was in season 3, I think. Um, she's living with ALS, and she was one of the ones who was just like, honestly, this has been a gift.
Mm.
Which is hard to imagine because she can't walk. And
Yeah.
she's she just said, this has forced me to slow down and really pay attention to what's important, which is to her,
Mhm.
family and friend relationships. And she says, I've never been so connected to the people that I love as I am right now. And it
Mm.
wouldn't have happened if I hadn't gotten this diagnosis.
Yeah.
Very similar to a gentleman that has multiple myeloma. He says, this thing has just really hit home that now is the time to do the things.
Yeah.
Now, seize the moment. Do what's important now because you may not have the time. Which is, I mean, that's a common theme. One of the most impactful relationships I had with a patient, not a guest on the podcast, but a patient, was with a lady who had been working for years and years. She retired, I think, at 62,
Mhm.
and then had been planning to go do all this travel and stuff. And then
Mm.
the week after she retired, got diagnosed with this
Ugh.
metastatic cancer.
Oh my
Was
God.
definitely going to take her life. And I got to know her really well, and she asked me if I would facilitate her funeral. And so, as she left the hospital and went home with hospice, and I would go over to her house, and we would kind of talk about what she wanted in the funeral. And
Mhm.
one of the things I asked was, what advice would you give? And she said, "Don't sweat the small stuff. Don't
Mhm.
don't pay it. Don't worry about the things that
Yeah.
aren't going to matter in 5 years or whatever."
Right.
And she said, she said, "Eat dessert first," which, it took me a minute, but it really is, don't put off the good stuff.
Yeah.
Um, you know, eat dessert, do the travel,
Yeah.
because she missed her time.
That
And
makes me so sad.
yeah, it was very sad. She did her best
Yeah.
living with this illness to do as much travel as she could, and she did a pretty good job. But what she was hoping for was 20 years of travel and seeing the
Yeah.
world, and she
Yeah.
had saved up so much money to be able to do that. And then,
Yeah.
you know, she just didn't get her chance. So
Yeah.
it is it is a regret, but it's also a lesson for all of us. And that
Yeah.
really is the gist of the podcast. That's why it's for everybody,
Right.
is because we all can benefit from their experience
Right.
if we pay attention to it.
So I gotta ask, with having all of these conversations and your career as a chaplain and um and I think it's probably a question a lot of people would wonder, how do you carry like all of that emotional weight? Like, do you have
Mm.
to set some sort of emotional boundaries so that you don't get down, or are the
Hmm.
stories really that uplifting that you're like it fuels you, or like, I mean, it's heavy
Hmm.
topic day after day.
Yeah, yeah. Um, some of all of that. Uh, there's a lot of talk, especially in the medical field, about the importance of empathy.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know, the question is kind of a semantic thing, but empathy and compassion. We talk about compassion fatigue. Um, I think there is a way of practicing where I can be there for a person,
Hmm.
but not not take on their emotion.
Hmm.
Um, and it really is just kind of a constant reminder to myself that um, that is not me.
Hmm.
That is not me. That is not my family.
Right.
They don't need me to be there feeling the same things they're feeling. They need
Right.
me to be attentive to what they're feeling and help them work with that and through that.
Hmm.
And so yeah, sometimes it's sad, and sometimes the relationship develops in such a way that it is more sad for me.
Hmm. I
But
mean,
I
it's
just
not
have
is
to.
it like a gut punch when somebody that you've been talking with for a while passes? I mean, it's
Mhm. Yeah, it can be. But also I know going in that that's what's gonna happen.
yeah, I
And
guess that's true.
so, it's not a surprise, and so I just kinda, early on had to say, death is not a failure.
Right.
And while the separation may be sad, there's nothing sad necessarily about death itself.
Right.
It's part of life, and while we feel the sadness, I I believe that there's nothing on the other side is going to be bad for
Right.
that person, so they're okay.
Mhm.
The only people who are not okay are still here, and
Mhm.
again, have to remember that I'm there in a professional capacity,
That's true.
and
Yeah.
while I am a professional carer, I'm caring for them, um, but not caring. I'm not carrying their burden.
Gotcha.
I'm sharing some of it for some time, but um, there it is boundaries. It is um, remembering the things. So a lot of the work of chaplaincy training is recognizing what really touches me and
Mhm.
what triggers me,
Mhm.
and both good and bad. There are
Right.
there are things
Right.
about some people that is really off-putting to me, and I have to be there for them in just as meaningful of a way as the people that I really like.
Yeah.
And so it's knowing those things that really hook me in, like when when siblings show up for each other and are there for each other and really caring for each other,
Mhm.
it touches me
Yeah.
because I love my siblings so much, and I have this great relationship with my siblings, and I see that. And that, if I'm not paying attention, I want to be part of that, and I get in there and I start to mix up my emotions with their emotions, and
Yeah.
you know that's not good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then some people come into the hospital and they're mean and combative and entitled, and that really is off-putting, and I have to be really paying attention to that, because it's really easy to walk past that door when I don't like it. I
Right.
don't
Right.
like the person,
Yeah.
when I really need to go in and attend to them just
Yeah.
like attend to everybody else. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so it's knowing yourself. It's setting some boundaries about what
Yeah.
is good practice and what is not good practice.
Yeah.
And I have a good team of people that, when I do have one of those that's really hard, um I can go back to my team and say, this is really hard. There's been a handful of cases over the years, and I say, this particular thing is too much for me.
Yeah.
one of you go do it.
So knowing your
And
limits.
yeah,
Yeah.
there are sometimes things that are just too much.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
reminds me too much of my granddad, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Right. Gotcha.
Or
All right.
yeah, sometimes it's just too much volume wise. It's
Yeah.
just like I've seen 5 deaths this week. That's my limit.
That's
I'm
your,
done for the week. So
that would be a lot.
yeah,
All
that's a
right.
lot.
Fill in the blank. When it
Okay.
comes to death, I wish more people knew what?
It's not always sad.
Okay. All right. And can
Do you want
you
me to tell
explain
more
that?
about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Give
Um,
me an example.
well, it's not sad all the time, is I guess what I mean. The leaving is always sad, but I
Right.
think a lot of people, um, people who are living with terminal illness still have the full breadth of human experience. And
Mm-hmm.
so they want to laugh. They want to find joy. They want to, get angry. They, just like everybody else. And so, when somebody's visiting, when you're being a companion for someone who's living with illness, um, the temptation, I think, is because you feel sad about what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
you assume that they feel sad all the time about what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not the case. I mean, I think they
Gotcha.
probably would, they feel sad about what's happening, but they also feel other things, and they like to relive memories that are fun and funny, and
Yeah.
they like to tell jokes, and they like to see the joy in life, and they want to see pictures of your kids, and
Yeah.
all the things that everybody likes to do, they want to do too. So it's not sad all the time.
Yeah.
um yeah, and I think people would be smart to take some joy with them when they're visiting somebody
Yeah.
who's living with illness.
So speaking along those lines, for somebody who wants to show up better for a loved one who is dying, what kind of guidance would you offer?
um the most important thing, I talk about this a lot, is remaining present. So people with living with serious illness are really, they're trying to, a lot of times, just see what is okay for me to talk about and
Mm-hmm.
with whom.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be a good companion for somebody, remaining with whatever it is that is happening in the room, whatever emotion is coming out, if you can just sit there and be with it, repeat it back to them, mirror it to them,
Mm-hmm.
um, show them that you're not afraid of the emotion that they're having, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
joy or sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And remembering that whatever emotion is coming at you from them is not going to harm you. It's not, and it's not yours.
Yeah.
And uh, the 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 way I talk about this is I had an encounter early on in my training where I was talking to a person, and the person started crying, and I got up and I went and got tissues for them, and I gave them tissues, and then we carried on with our conversation, but the conversation turned after that. And my supervisor said, well, I was so proud of myself because I was like, oh, I went and got tissues. I gave him tissues. And he was like, why did you go get tissues? And I said, well, they were crying. And he was like, so? And I was like, well, I wanted to comfort them. And he was like, do you think that it was more comforting for you to get tissues, or would it have been more comforting for you to listen to what they were saying and show them that you were not afraid of their tears? And I was like, yeah, well,
Wow.
that's important. And he said, if they want a tissue, they'll ask for a tissue. But when you see tears and your immediate reaction is to get them something to stop the tears, it tells them,
Oh,
whether you mean to or not, it
right.
tells them what's happening right now is not acceptable to me, and I want it to stop. And
Oh,
so I'm going to give you tissues.
but that's
And
totally not
so
what you intended.
it's not what I
But I
intended, but I
get
think
it.
that
I get
that
it.
is a message that
Totally.
can be
Yep.
can be heard in that
Yep.
way. And so I always say, don't get the tissues. Let what's happening happen. You
Yeah.
don't need to change the emotion or the the direction of the conversation,
Yeah.
lean into it. And, if they want a tissue, they will ask. I've tried it.
Is that right?
And
People
yeah,
ask.
for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Sometimes people ask and sometimes they don't. But
Okay.
if I can sit there and be in the discomfort of what's happening in the room,
Yeah.
it shows them that I'm not afraid, and what they're doing
Well,
is perfectly acceptable.
I think that's really insightful perspective.
Yeah, well, thank you to Bob.
Yeah.
Bob was my supervisor who
Did Bob make you
chastised me
feel a
for being kind.
little small that day, maybe?
It was the worst. I mean,
Yeah.
he was always just, all I wanted was to be told I was good, and
Yeah.
he just always, picked out the bad things,
Yeah.
that's the point, right?
But he made you a
I don't
better
really need to
chaplain
be
in that.
told I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I should know within myself that I'm doing a good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, so I've got one more question, and then I've got two questions I ask every guest. So the last question I have is, what do you hope that listeners of your podcast take away, especially when people are so afraid to talk about death in general? But what do you hope?
Well, I hope it normalizes the conversation around death and dying, and kind of demystifies it a little bit, and helps people to know that a terminal diagnosis is not the end of life, right? That's and a lot of times becomes the beginning of some really meaningful parts of life. So I hope that, and I also hope that people will live more thoughtful and intentional lives because of that. So, learning from, what's important to our guests is what's important to our guests, but, they pay attention to it. They learn about what's important. And I hope that those conversations strike up conversations and thoughts in the listener's mind to say, hey, what's important to me? And if I were to get a terminal diagnosis, what would I change about my life? And why don't I go ahead and change that now? And I can live a more meaningful life now, even when I don't have a terminal illness.
Yeah. Okay. All right. These are the questions I ask every guest. Number one, what has been the most transformative or impactful experience you've had since you either began work as a chaplain or since you started the podcast? Either one.
Well, I mean, I think the Eat Dessert First Lady was, Cindy was her name. That probably was one of the most impactful. I'll tell a different story though, or make a better podcast. So there was a very young man, probably my age at the time, and I think it was probably 6 years ago or something. So I was probably around 40 years old. But there's a man who had gotten this terminal diagnosis, and I was sitting there. It was cancer, and I was sitting in his room, and he was in very good shape. He was a police officer, and he had young kids. He was in good shape, and he was talking to me, and he was just saying, this. He probably used some expletives. I'll refrain, but he's, this is crap. Like I did all of the right things. I wore my seatbelt. I ate right. I exercise. I saved money. I have life insurance. I have done all the right things, thinking that this would keep me safe. And the reality is, I never was safe. And that has impacted me because I think not only in the way that, a cancer diagnosis can pop up for anybody, anytime, an illness can pop up for anybody, anytime. And yeah, that's true. So but also, the things that I do on a regular basis to make myself feel safe, my routines, my home, the things that I have all just right.
Yeah.
We do it to make ourselves feel like we're in control.
Right.
When the reality is we're not in control.
No.
And acceptance of that, and that's, I guess a lifelong expedition to find some acceptance that I'm not in control of really anything. It is infuriating and scary and also pretty liberating
Yeah.
because it can kind of let you off the hook for
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff. And in that vein, one of our guests, Riaz, said that as a way of becoming more grateful and optimistic in life, he came up with this mantra, which is life happens for me and not to me, recognizing that he's not in control of what happens.
Mhm.
But instead of just being a victim of whatever happens, he prefers to see it as though whatever happens is for him. And so it's either for him to learn or for him to grow or for him to change direction or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And so
I love that.
those two the combination of those two things, like recognizing that I'm not in control, but also being able to see things as though they are happening for me, um, on a good day, I do, and it's very helpful. It's liberating and it's joyful. It's adventurous, exciting.
My therapist calls that reframing.
Yeah,
Let's reframe that.
yeah,
I love that.
that's right.
All right, last question. Are you afraid to die? Why or why not?
Um, I'm not uh, I'm not afraid. I'm apprehensive, um, because of the unknown and because I'm not quite ready yet.
Mhm.
The older I get, I have little glimpses of times in my life where I go, I can see why people that I talk to who are ready to die are
Mhm.
ready,
Mhm.
you know, tired, just so much. And life just keeps coming at you. It's
Mhm.
relentless.
Yeah.
And I get glimpses of being ready, and
Yeah.
I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
I still have a lot to learn, and so in that way, I'm apprehensive. I don't think I'm scared of what's on the other side. I've
Mhm.
seen hundreds and hundreds, probably 1,000 people, more than 1,000 people die, and I've never seen anything that's made me think that something bad is on the other side. Um, and so I think there is peace, whether it's pull the plug and I'm over and out, nothing happens, or
Yeah.
there is something on the other side, or I'm returning to the great oneness, or returning my energy to the universe. I have to believe it's going to be peaceful and
Mhm.
fine, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, I've never had anybody come back and tell me otherwise, but so I think, yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid of what's on the other side. I'm apprehensive because of the unknown, and I'm not quite ready yet.
Gotcha. Well, Cody, I can't thank you enough for your time today and being on my podcast.
Yeah.
Listeners, I'll drop Cody's links in the show notes so you can easily find and listen to his Dying to Tell You podcast, as well as finding him on social. Cody, thank you again. It has been my pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
If you like this episode of Dying to Know More, be sure to like and subscribe to never miss another episode.